All right. So it was just something everybody's trying. Why is it trying to access protected memory? That's a good question. Shouldn't want to, but programs are funky that way. It was always one of those things when I was doing coding that you get that error message, you're like, I hate memory so much. The way it's allocated and accessed and reserved and let go. So when we go through our JFX, everybody good? No error, no more errors to deal with? Okay. We need to make sure we put in our what parameter, right? Whether it's rows first, whatever it is. We want to make sure we choose which table we want to go to. Sometimes we'll put a field, sometimes we won't. But we want to make sure when we put our filters, we put a balanced teeter-totter. One kid on one side, one kid on the other side. If I leave one of them off, I go to evaluate function, empty filter not allowed. Right? Kid on that one side throws a tantrum. Says, I'm on the teeter-totter by myself. What the heck, Dad? So we want to make sure we don't jump into that. Okay? So we want to bring it here. Talk about summary lists real quick. This is the first type of our dynamic lists. Back to not that one. How we're going to use it, what can go in the region, and then we're going to talk about our NL sum, our first, and our count. In fact, we're going to throw a count unique in there as well. So the actual definition of a summary list, well, we've got it on 3-A. As a summary list is a unique list of values from a field that contains non-unique values. What the heck does that mean? It means we're going to go out to a table and we want to bring back a unique list of values, right? We don't want any duplicates in there. But the table and that field where we're going to call against is going to be non-unique. So an example is create a list of customer numbers from our customer ledger entry table. That customer ledger entry table is a list of transactions. Each transaction is assigned to a customer. Hopefully that customer has done multiple transactions with us. So if I were to just look at the customer field, I might see the same customer over and over and over and over again. So we need a way to uniqueify those results. That's what the summary list is for. Go out to this table, look at this field, and bring me back a unique list of values. So what do we use it for? Summary lists are used to summarize data from tables whose records are too detailed for the desired results of the list. In essence, the same value can be found multiple times, and we only want it one time. Okay? So this is where we need to start thinking about, well, which table do I need to go to depending on what my report is supposed to show. And that's why when I was saying, as we were going through our mock-ups and building out the tables and fields, you have to know what that person wants. Do you want a list of every salesperson, or do you only want a list of salespeople who had a transaction? Because those would be two different tables, and they would actually be two different types of lists. If I only want to see the customers who had a transaction, that would be a summary list, because that's a non-unique field. Give me the salespeople who sold something in this time frame. They might sell multiple things. That's a summary list. We can then put within that replicated region my data functions, sum first, there's supposed to be a comma there, count unique. We can put Excel functions, we can put Excel formulas, we can put references to something else in there. When we build our summary list, the ultimate goal is to uniqueify that unique ID. Get a unique list of unique IDs. I don't want a list of, like I said, I go back to the salesperson because we might have two people with the same name. It happens. We've got two Tom Joneses out there. If I did a summary list against my customer ledger entry table and said, bring me back a unique list of salesperson names, Tom Jones is only going to show up one time, even though it's two different people. Right? It's not going to be able to differentiate Tom Jones 1 and Tom Jones 2. but those unique identifiers of that salesperson code are going to be different. So we want to make sure we go after that unique identifier. Bless you. So let's look at page 3-9 and actually get some exposure doing this and talking about it. I'm actually going to open up a new workbook here. Follow along with me. Open up a new workbook. And make sure you save this file because we are going to build upon this. So sheet number 1, we are just going to call this example 1. And I don't care where you start, I'm going to start around E8. Right now, all we're going to be concerned with is determining what the replicator is going to be and what filters we need to apply to it. So example 1, as part of a report in which the sales manager needs to keep track of how many customers each salesperson is responsible for, I need to create a list of all salespersons that are currently assigned to a non-block customer. So what this is saying right here is, okay, one of these is going to be my display field. What is it that I want to show in my report? And everything else in this list is going to be a filter. So in example 1, what is it that I want to show? I want to show a list of salespeople. So I'm going to go ahead and type in salesperson code, just so I know what it is that I'm going to display. Right underneath that, I'm going to go ahead and open up my JFX, open up the NL function. And I want to create a list, so I'm going to drop this down and choose rows. For my table, well, it's telling me I need to go to my customer table. So I'm going to drop that down and type in customer. The example is telling us where to go. And I want to bring back a unique list of salesperson codes. So I'm going to use the field and say salesperson code. But I have a specific criteria. Customers that are not blocked. So the other field there is blocked, so I'm going to go ahead and choose blocked. Oops, not blocked. And which one do I want to choose as a value? I've got, it can either be blank, ship, invoice, or all. So if I say all, everything is blocked, I'm blocking them from invoicing, I'm blocking them from shipments, or I'm not blocking them. So I want the blank. The problem is I can't leave that blank. Right? That's one of the options in this field. If I were to just leave this here, empty filter not allowed. In this instance, I can't put star, right? Because star would return everything, whether it's all, shipped, invoice, or blank. What I actually end up having to do is, what's that?
Quotes.
Yeah, I could do quote, quote. Oops, that won't work. It's quote, double quote. That works, right? Look at for this. But a better way, because that's really hard to read. Right? How many lines do I have?
6.
Yeah. A better way to do that is allow special characters. And it's going to put in double quote, add double quote. That's essentially taking the place of a blank value. This is one of our kind of special filters. So I've had this, I had to create a report that showed all employees, all current employees for a company. But they didn't have an active or inactive or terminated or whatever it was field. They had their employee number, and then they had a termination date or last date of employment. So what we had to do is say, okay, in order to do current ones, you wouldn't have a last date of employment, it would just be left blank. So that's what we had to do. Give me all the employees where that last date of employment is blank.
So functionality like blank or is null or those kinds of things do not work here. So what you're saying, this is
It does, you just have to use the at is recommended to say this is blank. If I want to say not blank, I can just say not equal to, greater than, less than, right? And then the value. So this is not blank, this is blank, right?
Okay.
So
What is not blank?
the greater than, less than, two little alligators battling with the at. Got a 5-year-old. That's how we do math. It's an alligator who eats little numbers. So yeah. So this is one of those instances where you have to do something a little bit different. You can use the double quote, single tick, double quote, but it's really hard to read. If you just know this at works, it's recommended because it's much easier to read. Now, what we can see is some of you might have JJ, some of you might have a different value. Don't ever trust this value until you run the report. So you guys should have a list of BD, JJ, JR, KL, PS, SA, and TM. Something along those lines. Okay? Now the reason I say don't trust it, I go back into design mode, and you can see now that's BD instead of JJ. It was JJ before, now it's BD. This is just showing you one of the sample values. Typically it's going to show you the first one it finds. It happened to find JJ first, and then when I went back into design mode it said, oh well, now I've got BD as a sample value. So where this really comes in handy, or where this concept comes in, is twofold. Right? If I've got a blank value, for example, I'm going to go ahead and create another replicator here. Address 2. If I were to come in and say Rose customer address 2, oops, address 2, okay. It looks like I've got a blank value. If I rerun my report, I can see I actually have a blank value plus this value, this one, and this one. So that's why I say don't ever really trust this until you run the report. The other time that this can get you caught up is sums, financial statements. It won't actually run the full query until you run the report. So you might see a number here and say, well, I'm expecting 50,000, and it's showing 25,000. Don't rack your brain trying to figure out why it's wrong. Run the report first, and then see if it's wrong. If it's wrong, then rack your brain why that's wrong. But make sure you run that report. Because it's not always going to be right. Most of the time it is. Not all the time. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just color code this here. Okay. So that's example 1. We've got our unique list of salespeople who are responsible for customers who are not belong. And the reason we're doing this summary list, well, we're going to a customer table and we're looking at the salesperson code. That salesperson code is probably going to be non-unique, right? We don't assign every customer their own individual salesperson. Typically one salesperson is responsible for multiple customers. So that's why it's a non-unique field in that table. So let's look at example 2. Example 2. Our vendor payments. Where do I start this one? E8, so let's start on E8 again. As part of a report in which the payables manager needs to verify the total payments made to vendors each quarter, create a list of vendors that we made a payment to in the first quarter of 2007. So here we need to say, okay, these are our display and our filters. One of these is going to be my display filter. What is it that I want to display? Document type, posting date, or vendor number? Vendor number. So I'm going to go ahead and type in vendor number. That's going to be my little header. Right underneath it, I'm going to go ahead and create my NL function. My NL. I'm going to go ahead and use my rows. I can just type that in or I can drop it down. Rows, either way. Just know if you type it in, you have the possibility of misspelling it. And Jet will be a little upset with you when you try and run the query. But at least it'll throw an error and say, I've got an invalid parameter of what? And you'll know exactly where you went wrong. Our table, well, it says we want to go to our vendor ledger entry table. So let's go ahead and drop that down and choose vendor ledger entry. And we said we wanted to display our vendor number. So let's type in our vendor number as our field. Okay. Good so far. But we've got these two other fields, document type and posting date. Those are our filters that we need to use, right? Because it says we need to create a list of vendors that we made a payment to in the first quarter of 2007. So the first one we can deal with is the posting date. First quarter of 2007, 01/01/07, .03/31/07, first 3 months. And the next one is our document type. Our document type, well, what do we have to choose from? We want a list of vendors we made a payment to. So I'm going to go ahead and choose payment.